So I'm going to share some of my most recent sketchbook. I don't go through a ton of sketchbooks, for good or for bad, but I do live with them in the sense that I take notes in it, I write down thoughts in it, I course plan in it. I don't treat it in a way where I'm always making finished drawings and finished imagery. I guess I use sketchbooks like half journal, half notebook, half sketch diary kind of thing. I do really like these sketchbooks though. The Proko sketchbooks, I like the paper. Like I'm lefty, so I have a tendency to blend a lot of ink, and I mostly like to draw with pen. So here's an example of what I mean. Like this is a page of color selection and design for a living room, where I like measure windows, write down passwords, notes from phone calls, fridges, fridge depth and width, and then like random characters. So like this would be like mostly you would find in my sketchbook where there's like, I make a lot of diagrams, like maps of thoughts and like how I'm organizing my thoughts. These are like different meditation practices, different, sometimes this is like measurements for rooms. These are, notes and discussions from a dissertation that I'm working on, where I put all my notes with like my chair or advisor here, and then I'll later incorporate them into my paper, or, so a lot of like thoughts. Sketchbooks for me are really like, I think drawing just in general for me is always, it's how I'm thinking. It's like a window into my thought process, and even that is clear in terms of like gesture drawings. Gesture drawings for me are notational in the same way that, like notes I would write my notes for a paper and what needs to be incorporated and included in a paper. It's kind of like a introspective or analytical emphasis in most everything that's in here, even if that's like journaling. Like, so here would be, I love drawing animals, even though I don't find that I'm particularly good at it. I love thinking about it. And so that's, what these pages represent is just thinking about how, different animals would be represented, or how different perspective and proportion plans would map out, and differences between cows, cats, monkeys. Like I usually, when I'm starting a class, teaching a class, I always, try to get to know people on the first day, and then write down a few things about them so I remember their names and their likes and their dislikes, so that I know how to order a class to meet their interests, or to kind of have a little bit more relevancy to them. So you find that a lot in here. Some head studies, animal heads compared to people heads. So these are some just kind of like notes from lectures that I'll go to, right? So some heads and expressions, and a lot of that early in this sketchbook was kind of mapping and thinking about the structural relationship and similarities between people and animals. My art history dissertation is on kitsch and politics. So there's a lot of writing and mapping out about, low culture. There's some thinking and writing about kitsch here. Same thing. Notes from meeting with like a financial planner. Here I'm learning how not to go broke. There's some gesture and structure from animals, which is what the majority of these are early. Like some gesture and build outs for lions. Anatomy on horses. Same thing. Yeah. Dogs, horse structures. On some reptiles over here. I think some of this early sketchbook was when I was teaching graduate students also. So there's, I would take this into graduate meetings and take notes as people were talking or sharing stuff about their projects. So it's kind of a constant companion in that sense, but I don't do a lot with sketchbooks what I don't like or do with sketchbooks anymore is, go and sit somewhere and just draw and constantly record, where I never liked that in the past because it felt like it removed me from where I was, or I wasn't fully appreciative of a place or a person that I was meeting with because I was constantly trying to draw them or capture them. Always felt like a little removed, like at the expense of being in the moment, I'm gonna record it and look at it as a pen drawing later. Just seemed a little pointless after a while. But I kind of like it now more as like it's a companion to being at a place or doing a thing, but I don't really carry it as much. It's you know, especially in my own personal time. So I'll write my schedule in here a lot. Sometimes ideas for paintings, or these are some drawings of grad students during their meetings and drawing them. This is kind of notes of my dissertation. This here is planning for a course I taught on the history of design. So this was planning out the course content and lectures for a class on the history of design. So I kind of try to map it out in the same way that you see me, mapping out anything in here, but I separate it into stages or periods in history, then break that down into 5 topics that I find to be consistent throughout 3 stages in history, and then I build out my course from there. So a lot of kind of notes for teaching, or how I would think about teaching, and this is continued over here, where I'm thinking about the same. So if this is the map of the whole course in terms of like the flow of lecture and structure, then this would be like, how do I get into the individual lectures? So what is central to design, and how do we build out from there? So if that's interesting to anybody, my favorite author there is Penny Spark, who writes about design in just about every facet of its use. And then these are some drawings of my dog, and more kind of student names, meeting people. Yeah, same thing. Some figure drawings. I think these are drawn from Bodies in Motion. These are sometimes note-taking during student presentations. So these are from that same class, History of Design, students giving a presentation, taking notes, and trying to take key things away to ask questions or have dialogue with them. This is from, these are notes from a class I took. So I take a lot of classes, try to always be learning as much as everybody else is. All you guys are. These are from the Animal Anatomy workshop in clay at Anatomy Tools. This was a workshop on the anatomy of wolves, or canines, I should say. So there's lots of information about comparative anatomy, the movement of parts, the orientations of muscles, things that I find to be really interesting. And then this would be a day where I'm just kind of sketching from people in the class, or sketching like the sculpting stands. I'm back in a class. I do a lot of teaching, so meeting more people. Yeah, this would be maybe a life drawing workshop, or just kind of drawing students. This is from life drawing workshops here. So occasionally I go to a life drawing workshop near me on Wednesday evenings. Not as often as I'd like, but still try to make it out. These are always pretty short poses over there, but they're fun. It's something to do to get out of the house. I think rarely do I do light and shadow drawings or try to do more tonal studies, but you can see I'm mostly kind of interested using pen for a lot of these sketchbooks. So here's a couple of those, and some drawings there. This would be back to kind of that whole mapping idea, where this was from a course on the history of drawing, from modern period forward. So the history of drawing and fine art. So I organize things visually and then try to fill in histories in between those. And then here's kind of going back to some of that thinking about design and the history of design, and trying to map that out as well. And some figure studies. These would be back at some workshops. Some are pen, some are, you can see the different pose lengths, early gesture, and a little bit longer on this side of the page. These are some notes from, I was teaching foundation drawing for a little bit, or basic sketching. So that's kind of over here. Thinking about like orders of line, really stripping things down to basic mechanics of line, shape. And then, back in class, breaking things down, so simple objects, and then interpreting them in their most primitive geometries. And again, a lot of times, like stuff like this, I'm just trying to reorganize my own thinking, so that when it comes time to present it for a group or an audience, that it feels organized in my head. And putting things on paper and seeing it organized visually does that for me. That might be the primary use that I get out of my sketchbook, is organizing information, and that's what this is too. These are some drawings of my friend's dog with a birthday hat. And that's always necessary. And then, you know, just some back to maybe doing an in-class life drawing here. That's what these are. Oh, here's that same thing with just a lot of weird notes around it. So doing a lot of, you know, cars and perspective, and then some figures on top, and then some notes. So that's a crazy looking page. And then for my own personal work, I was doing a lot of political figures and billionaires for a while, and doing a lot of drawings and studies of those. And so that's what this is. And thinking more about, I think that's Jeff Bezos and Rupert Murdoch. Sometimes I'll write things like how to organize my thoughts in communicating with people, or sometimes I'll take notes in different books I read and just try to organize that information as a picture so that I can see that. And then that's always like, then there's the weird random, you know, thinking about form intersections to the side. Sometimes to-do lists, sometimes a pelvis. And then these are kind of a little bit more finished pen and ink drawings I was doing of different, the excesses of cultural figures and political leaders. So I did a whole little series of drawings of Elon Musk on his yacht and Jeff Bezos on his yacht. And then sometimes I would, you know, take more of an interest and try to render them more, but I don't tend to be interested in rendering things quite as much. I don't know why. It could just be a phase, you know, like everything. But these have like some writing on them too. And then here's another one. Some of these just felt like they had like a classical quality, like a painting. I think I was flirting with the idea of making paintings out of these, and then just never did. And then I'll just have a random thought about a hot tub, so I'll draw that up there. It really makes me look like I'm mad. This is sometimes I think this is the only drawing in this book where I actually went somewhere and sat and looked at it. This is drawing the Morro Bay rock near my home that I'll always walk by when I'm taking my dog out. So I would stop occasionally and sketch that for a little bit. But otherwise, I tend to just kind of get bored of just sitting and drawing stuff. Any drawing for me, I'm always trying to find that balance between the conceptual and then the kinetic, like what I'm thinking about and then how it's drawn. Something in between those two is always, I think, where my sketches or my drawings live. Here's Jeff Bezos' yacht with his wife, and I just thought these were kind of grotesque and fascinating at the same time. Or I'm always also interested in looking for where there exists opportunity to make paintings about people in the present. I think that's my biggest stumbling block always with trying to manufacture or think about imagery, painting, like making something more finished. You know, it's like, what is the utility of it? What is the utility of making a painting today? And what's the audience for a painting? Like if I were to make a painting or a series of paintings with this, you know, as a figurative artist, I want to look for scenes that might have figures in action or relating. I mean, I think there's something interesting to say here about the aesthetics of wealthy bodies. We always get our idea of beauty generally from moneyed classes, or for people with wealth set a standard of aesthetic beauty. But then it's like, why make a painting? You know, like, you could see an image of this on, you know, YouTube or social media, and the impact might be instant, and people would take what they would want, and to make a painting and to spend all that time to paint it, it could just be limiting to your audience instead of expansive. So I think a lot of that I think about when I'm working out ideas in a sketchbook, and then I'll sit with them and then, you know, kind of evaluate them. But this kept my interest for quite a while. It still does, but as far as it's concerned now, I'm just really not interested in taking it further in drawing, but these are more of the same. But I would plan a series of works out like this. Like this would be more of the same, Jeff Bezos and his wife. I think there's just something really interesting about maybe that tension between the grotesque and the beautiful in some of these images. Also the way that they like so seamlessly seem to allude to like classical compositions in paintings. This is the same thing. Like I was just kind of interested in the group and the play of the different surfaces, like the reflective versus the more matte surfaces of the body, the contrast of the metal on the yacht versus the grouping of the figures. I don't know why the red pen. I just really like it, and I'm interested in sometimes the temperature effects of the red and the black, the warm and the cool between those. And then these are you're thinking about like organizing courses and videos, and yeah, so it's odd, but there's a lot more sometimes writing in sketchbooks than there is drawing for me. An equal amount, I should say. Sometimes I write down information about taxes. These I'm starting to think about, trying to make anatomy, I think at this time, organize some lectures I was doing on anatomy and character and how I was thinking about, the history of American illustration. What's interesting for me to say about character and body type. And so same thing here, playing with muscles and shapes as a series of patterns. Sometimes it's a list of things to do, like paint the bathroom. Sometimes it's like, what am I doing with my week? Maybe it's like it's an extension of my brain more than my cell phone is, probably. Always there's figures being constructed somewhere. Or feet. I don't really know what this was for, but I think probably from Bodies in Motion, just drawing from the 3D viewer of the foot for whatever reason, because sometimes it's fun, or maybe you just feel a little rusty. And then that's pretty much it. I think this is a rare drawing. I don't do too many kind of rendered with Prismacolor types of drawings, but that was what was happening here. And then, yeah, that's it. Hope you enjoyed my insane sketchbook.
If you enjoyed this and want to learn from Michael, check out his figure construction course and his head construction course on Proko.com. Both courses cover everything that he teaches in his classes with comprehensive demonstrations and lectures. This is the same content he's taught at places like Art Center and LCAD. Also, he just released a brush pack on Gumroad. They're pretty simple, but if you'd be interested in those, they're free. Everything is in the description if you want to learn more. Thanks, and have a good one.